last time. All right, I got the notification. You did it.
All right, I'm calling to order the regular monthly meeting of the Economic Development Commission, October 5th at 6:33. I will put the agenda up shortly. Those of you who went to the website or that I emailed to, you have the agenda in your document. I'll just briefly summarize it. Additions or deletions, citizen comments. Two old business items. One, follow-up discussion on the emergency fund, if there is one. A discussion of that. If not, we can deal with it next month. And I don't know if there are any child care grant recipients to provide an update, but if there are, they can do that then. Then we have 5 items of new business, a preliminary discussion put forward by the Housing Working Group to improve worker housing supply, a discussion of the 2024 community grants process, which we typically undertake at our annual meeting early in the year, ideally January. A discussion, and actually I might, in the interest of having people who are here who might not need to be here for the other things or want to, we might do this first, because I think it'll be very brief. Discussion about insurance costs for not-for-profit food vendors on the green. Preliminary results of the community survey on tourism, and an update on really just the scheduling and logistics of launching the visitor survey and the merchant survey. That's the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
John, Larry and I just had that verbiage to throw out there as a first draft for the sunset clause. If you want to hear it, whenever that comes to the meeting.
That's old business. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Can I ask that you stick to people? There's 2 of us here for that's the one for the
Sure. We had published it that way. That's fine. Sorry,
What's the sunset clause?
the sunset clause. Yeah. Okay.
What is that?
That we discussed last time that going forward, grants would have a explicit
yes.
sunset clause.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing no additions or deletions to the agenda, are there any citizen comments? As always, for those of you who have been here before, we take citizen comments relevant to the topics on the agenda when we're discussing them, assuming we have time. I think we will. We always have. Are there any citizen comments on any other topics? Hearing none. Okay, old business, follow-up discussion of an emergency fund. At the last meeting, Joe, you and 2 others were going to.
And I overcommitted myself.
Okay.
This is the time of the year where everything you can plan for, I can plan for, is no work. So, next month, I think we'll be able to take care of that.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I think until we decide explicitly to establish one, we won't have one. And there were a good number of people who were, I don't remember who was on which side of that debate, but it wasn't unanimous. It wasn't strongly one way or the other. So
Right.
We'll get to it when we get to it.
Sure.
Okay.
Next month, I would anticipate that being taken care of. Things would quiet down enough for you can spend some time on it.
Okay. Todd, are there any, where did Todd go? Oh, he's on my screen probably. Todd, are there any childcare updates? You're muted.
No.
Okay. Sunset clause.
Do you want me to put it in the chat? And then you can read it and I can read it out loud, or Larry can read it out loud, or what's easiest for you guys?
Why don't you do both? Why don't you put it in the chat?
Yeah.
And
Okay. Larry, you cool with that? All right. I'm going to try to put this in the chat. I'm banned on chatting in the select board, but I think I can do it here.
you're not yet banned here.
All right.
I believe in everybody that unselect.
All right, cool. So yeah, it's still my fault though. But all right, so here we go. Larry and I came up with this first draft. Here we go. Unless otherwise provided by the terms of this grant, any balance not used after 1 year automatically reverts to the EDC unless an extension request has been received in writing at least 30 days prior to the yearly expiry. Any requests for extensions will be reviewed within 45 days, and the decision will be conveyed to the grantee. During the gap of the yearly expiration and the extension review, No funds will be administered until a decision has been made. That was it.
Any comments?
Weren't we gonna add in that it would be our responsibility to alert the recipients that their time was up?
I don't know if we just ripped in that, but I put in your preface in there, unless otherwise provided by terms of this grant. I have that, but I didn't notice that. But whatever, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we have here and go from there. Either way, since it's a draft. Larry, you got a thing to add in there? Since it's just a draft.
Well, I just think that these grant recipients could easily miss that deadline, and it's would if we can just set up a schedule so that they get notified in
Do
writing.
we think that should be in the initial contract, or it's something we just put on like a calendar at the meeting? What do y'all think about how should they be notified and what mechanism?
We can automate the notification. The grant manager portal can easily, we can easily automate that.
Yeah. So Larry, you're saying that, just to clarify, you're saying that when we go and make the arrangement and we make the grant documentation, there'll be a date of notification. Then John's saying that can happen automatically through the portal.
Yeah, and it's kind of a big deal to cut them off. I think I'd feel more comfortable that we'd given them notice.
I love it. I think that's a great idea. You probably had it and I ignored it. So that's great. Second time around.
Any other comments,
I just had a question.
Marion?
I assume this is for funds that haven't been dispersed.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Funds that are encumbered, meaning we can't give them to anyone else, but they haven't been dispersed.
Okay.
Which are significant, usually. They're significant. Does
How
anyone
much,
have-
how much is there right now? I mean, how would, if that was in effect right now, what would that amount to? I mean,
well-
is there like
So there is a sunset clause currently. There's not a sunset clause. There's a sunset process, which is me deciding, I think because I'm very conservative about it, without any dispute, that something has been sunset. For example, a grant for the 2021 fireworks.
okay.
Right? So.
I'm
and
just
there's a-
curious if people just are not using it, if they're not, how much of it is not being used?
Yeah, I could report, why don't I report back on that at the next
Yeah.
meeting? It's, when you say not being used, it depends, we've recouped about $100,000 of funds that were no longer going to be used or no longer could be used by the grantee.
Yeah.
And, right, so that's,
I'm just, what brings that to mind is, if when you're in the restaurant business and you start clearing tables and you see there's a lot of food left on a lot of plates, you say to yourself automatically, you're giving them too much. So I'm wondering if we're giving them too much, and if we are, there's something we should think about.
yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't we, once we've adopted this, why don't we put on the agenda for the next meeting, a review of the grants that for which we've recovered, and we can decide. I don't think that's
The case.
that's the case, but I think I shouldn't be the only one looking at it, which is why having a sunset clause came up.
Okay.
So why don't I bring the data and we can look at
That
that?
sounds
I don't think there'll be a big dispute historically.
Okay.
And this sunset clause will eliminate any dispute going forward.
Don, that's also something that's gonna be looked at when I'm doing the reviews, so.
Right.
That's data that we're gonna be coming up with monthly.
Going forward, we'll have a better sense of it
Yeah.
even before the sunset clause takes effect.
Right.
Can I just, are there any other comments? I have a quick comment about this. Did you consider, Larry and Todd, a different time frame, like 18 months instead of 12 months?
No, we just made this up and felt comfortable with it, but it's all, let's talk about any time frame, really. What do you guys think?
Well, actually, can I withdraw my suggestion for today? Because I think actually looking at the data of the grants that have been closed by me will give us a good sense of what that is. And so I would be comfortable with this personally with this language for 12 months now, but I might, when we all look at the data, I might want to change it or propose a
Well,
change.
The reason we started it with the quibble part of it was that I think we should discuss this with each
Yeah.
grant recipient at the time the grant is made and say, is a year long enough? The fireworks would obviously is 6 months, but no, we need 2 years. Okay, well then,
Yeah, that's right, Larry.
I
Yeah.
think we're gonna get a varying timeline.
The
But
sort of
we
the,
just threw in 1 year so that we have
Yeah.
an absolute to deal with.
the spirit of it is depending on what the project is and what we approve and how it's doled out. Like Bridgewater childcare is going to take longer than the WCCC, for example. So that's right. The year came and just sort of getting it out in that way.
Yeah,
But
but Todd, wouldn't that phrase that you have in there about a 30-day notification? In other words, if somebody gets notified, in 30 days, it's gonna sunset, and the recipient would be able to say, well, can we have another 6 months? Can we have?
Yeah, you're right. That's if everybody just was a year, they would all get that notification. They'd all write
And
back.
they'd have the opportunity to say, no, we need a little bit more time.
That's
And
a
give
good point.
reason for it.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
good
so I
point.
think, yeah, so I'm fine with the language as it is. Roger, and then.
But quick insert, Larry. Do you want to suggest how to insert that? We'll notify them in that verbiage, or is that not necessary? And we'll just do that, John.
I think we should. I think
Why not?
we should be obliged to do it, and might as well just say so.
Fine with that.
Someone
can I
smarter than me
suggest-
throw it in there.
All right, Roger, go ahead.
Can I suggest that you explicitly insert language here, the recognition that some of these are designed and have been awarded as multi-year projects?
So that people reading it don't think that they have
Right.
to spend it in one.
So I think it's just another clause in there.
Does that, Todd, are you and Larry comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Okay,
the more clarity with simplicity in the verbiage, the better. That's the point. I think it's great. Larry, what do you think? I thought that was a good idea of Rogers.
I didn't hear it, but Roger's ideas are usually good.
Yeah, most of the time.
so I'm gonna suggest then, Todd, why don't you just make those revisions and we'll vote on this next month.
All right.
John, can I make one comment?
Sure, Patrick, go ahead.
His language says unless specifically specified. I think I'd keep the language really simple and let people add a question to your grant process of how long, and let people choose that. And then that might be the easier way to do it than to make this, lots of gobbledygook. Keep this simple. I like how simple this is. And if somebody's going to do a grant, you can, if you want, you can even have 1 year, 18 months, 2 year, as a checkbox.
I don't think we're gonna, we're gonna come and talk about the community grant process. I think we can just add that, we can just agree now to add that question to the grant application.
Oh, yeah. How
that
long
kind of-
do you think you'll need to encumber the funds? Yeah, that's a great idea.
That kind of automatically, I don't think anyone's gonna look at this language, but us looking back at it to make
Yeah.
sure that we're adhering to it. It's not like we're gonna be sending it out to everybody. We'll put it in the grant agreement, but by that point in time, the grant agreement doesn't happen until after the grants are approved. And so by that point in time, they will already have had a discussion with us about how long it would have taken. So I think as a practical matter, it will all work the way you're suggesting, Patrick.
Yeah, and you could put it in the application form. I
Right.
mean,
Exactly. That's what I think we should plan to do.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
So Todd, you'll come back to us with the final language next month.
Yep.
And talk about we're gonna talk about the grants process in a minute. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else on this? No, all right, new business, preliminary discussion of an idea to improve worker housing availability.
Trina's online and I'm here. Can we assume that you've all read what was in the packet? Okay. So we're not here to talk about the details. We're here to talk about the general idea, make sure that we're all aligned. And if we are, then we plan to take the concept to the select board to make sure that we're all moving in the right direction. This proposal will incur quite a lot of Trina's time and lawyers' time because it's not so easy as it sounds. But
I don't think that the housing working group should go to the EDC, it should go to the select board. I think the EDC should go to the select board. If it's I realize that the funding, the proposal for this. Anyway, I just saying, I don't want to set that precedent necessarily, but I
Okay.
do think that this doesn't involve EDC funding, so.
No.
it's a
And
little-
so the only reason we would go to the select board is because they asked originally for, they asked us to investigate something, and so we have investigated, so we'd like to give them an answer.
No,
But
we-
that can come from the.
And we should, I think it's the actual,
Okay, so do you have any questions, or do you want me to go through this basically?
well, can I just state my understanding of it? Maybe that
Yes.
will, because I suspect my understanding of it isn't quite right. But that fundamentally, that, so the question that the select board asked us, just as a reminder, was, what about existing landlords? In other words, we have an incentive, Roger decides to build an ADU, he gets an incentive to add a new ADU to the thing. Jill has all along had an ADU, she doesn't get anything. That struck some members of the select board or some constituents of the select board, and therefore some members of the select board as unfair to the people who already have it. Without opining on that, that's what happened. And so this proposal is to provide tax relief to those who have it.
Two parts. Tax relief to people who are already renting a unit to workers, to local workers, and tax relief to people who are building an ADU and therefore improving the value of their property and about to get an extra property tax, a bill, which diminishes the value of the grant we gave them in the first place. So two parts to it.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the idea.
Yes, and this, we're talking about using a method that is well used in different parts of the country and is used in Vermont currently for commercial properties, property development. But we want to talk to a lawyer to make sure that the statutes that we have allow us to do what we do and get the process very clear.
One of the, I have one more question, and then please, anyone jump in. But your memo suggested that the method that you want to investigate and confirm allows for the town to reduce the property tax without placing the extra burden of that property tax on the remaining taxpayers.
Well, that's true for the ADU because that's a new property, so the property tax has never been charged. So you're not asking anybody to take on something else. But with an existing property, you would be asking people to take on, you'd just be asking everybody else in the town to take on a share.
Yeah.
Of people already, providing, I'm sorry, existing landlords.
Right, okay.
Yes.
The memo needs to, maybe should be cleared up on, well, maybe I just misread it. But if just take another look, or I'll take another look at it. Okay, so,
So any other thoughts as we go forwards investigating this?
all right.
Just a quick question. I mean, I know you're investigating or asked to anyway, but do we have a sense of whether there are people for whom renting at this reduced rate is a burden and who this would prevent them from taking the rental unit off the market at that discounted rate?
Yeah.
So this is actually, on the one hand, we're adding capacity, and this is actually preventing the reduction of capacity.
Yes, and I don't think you know whether, it's certainly getting more expensive to be a landlord, and you don't know whether people are threatening that or really ready to do that.
Are there any other comments? So specifically, the first thing that would happen is expenditure in your allocated funds for legal costs.
Yes,
And that's built into your,
yes. And to ask your other, to go backwards, your other question about is there a way to recompense landlords without having everybody else pay the tax? We could give a grant for the difference.
who's the we? The town?
The EDC.
Oh,
We could use the EDC grants for the difference rather than put it. Tax
Right.
bill.
Right, in other
Is
words,
that, is that one of your suggestions about how to solve this issue or address the issue?
I don't,
it is
Or do
not,
you have
it's
any-
not in the memo. The memo is suggests funding this, that the town, that the town,
we actually haven't gone as far as that. We've only gone as far as reduce the property taxes for landlords renting property long-term to local workers at or below the rental rates. We haven't suggested how it's done.
well, I believe legally, there's only one way to do it. I believe, you'll have to confirm it, which is that everyone else, the state has figured this out. The state has basically said, you can give whatever tax exemptions you want to.
But somebody else
But
gotta pick up
but
that.
Woodstock is going to pay the amount.
But it could be Woodstock EDC.
Correct, oh, of course.
No, somebody has to
Yeah.
pay.
So you're suggesting that the EDC would pick up the.
They're not suggesting.
We're not suggesting any of those things, but we have thought about different
Oh,
alternatives.
okay.
Where you
So
ask
you have the
every
thoughts out.
taxpayer to contribute, or
Right.
you ask EDC to fund it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Basically, the select board's authorized to create some property tax stabilization or exemptions for the municipality. And is that a direction that we would be interested in going to solve this problem?
well, so I have a opinion about this, a strong opinion about how to fund it. And a less strong opinion, but still an opinion about whether to do it.
Can we go to your opinion about whether to do it or not first? Because that's going to say whether we go forward with the work.
Well, I think our objective is to increase the supply of workforce housing. And there's no question that building a new unit of housing increases the supply of workforce housing. That's unambiguous. We are certain 100% that when we give our incentive, we will increase the supply of housing. We have no idea and no way of assessing whether or not giving an incentive to an existing landlord to not stop doing it is going to achieve the objective, because we have no idea and there is no way to know whether or not the landlord would take it off the market if we don't give the incentive. If we had to guess, given that it's on the market, and not only do we not have any way of verifying it or knowing whether we're achieving our objective, but if you had to guess with no other information, you would assume that we were not achieving our objective since the unit is on the market and the increase has already been established and the landlord has already paid it and not taken it off the market. So you follow what I'm saying?
John, I think you're attacking the wrong issue. We're not here to argue about whether to fund. We're actually here because we want to go and answer the select board. And so how about if we went to the select board with the idea that we as an EDC don't want to put our grants here because of what you said.
Oh, yeah.
There is another way to do this.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Sharon,
that's exactly.
Correct.
how about that?
Absolutely. No, that's where I would come out as.
Okay, good.
I don't
Yes.
believe, it might have, the select board might not have might have a different objective than increasing the supply
Right.
of workforce housing. I would be fine with that.
Which might be maintaining this.
Or placate, yes, maintaining the supply, call it what you will. I think that for us, that's not what I would call it, maintaining the supply, but one could.
Yes, you're right.
Right. So I think that what we can be pure about, if we as an EDC agree, is what the EDC wants to do. But we do have an obligation to go to the select board to answer their question. So now, by the way, it is possible that giving an incentive to an existing landlord would prevent the reduction of supply. I mean, that is possible. It's not absurd. But I think that given the success
Why?
that
He would just say, I'm not gonna build it?
No, not build it.
No,
It's-
no.
So we're talking about somebody who's already renting.
Yeah,
There are several
Yeah.
people who are already renting,
Yeah.
and renting at below market rates.
Yeah.
And working hard to keep that. And every time property taxes go up, electricity prices go up,
They
many,
take the
many
hit.
people
yeah,
say,
they take the hit.
what am I doing?
So what they might do is they might say, I'm gonna renovate this and I'm gonna charge market rates and
That's it. Bye.
I mean, the whole notion of going back and price fixing the past, I find very hard to swallow. That's not how fair market economy works. It's not
This
based
isn't
in,
Todd-
it's not, let me
Todd-
finish, please. I'm speaking. It's not based on reality, because I could be renting below market to Matt Lombard's workers because I'm really good friends with Matt and I think he's fantastic. And then Matt gives me free restaurant meals at Santi, but I'm going to get a tax credit for it. Like there's so much subjectivity and area of gray where there isn't in just straight up the other programs we have, the other great successful programs you guys have implemented that say, here is what we paid and it gave us a new this. And that's where I struggle to go and connect the dots on giving people who already bought a car a tax discount after they already paid the tax for their Vermont registration or whatever.
So Todd is not arguing that we don't go to the select board. He's
No,
just
not at all.
doing the second part of it, which is what is the EDC's stance on this approach?
Right, but
Correct.
I'd like to question your fair market economics.
Sure.
Fair market economics has got us into this mess. We're in a mess. Economics don't work. We have to interrupt economics. That's what we're trying to do.
I mean, that's your opinion that economics don't work. That some economists will say this, some economists will say that. Like you can't. I respect your opinion, but you're not an expert.
I'm not sure you can argue about the lack of supply of houses, and economics is all about supply and demand.
Oh.
We have greater demand than supply.
I think the question is not. I think that this is actually the question is the EDC's objective is to increase the
Exactly.
There could I think we've shown that the approach we've taken to incent new construction is working.
Right.
If that wasn't the case, personally, I might be more willing to think about incenting people to not reduce it without any, in other words, I might be more willing to do this, but we have an approach that we can put dollars to, and I don't see any end to wanting to fund that. I would put as many dollars as we can afford into an approach where we know for certain that if we give Roger $10,000, we've helped to add.
It's the most successful thing that we've done, I think. It's
right.
so solid.
So therefore,
But I think that the whole point of, or not the whole point, but part of this is to actually keep building upon that. Because one of the common themes is that we give an incentive grant to build an accessory dwelling unit. And then that money is pretty much washed away by the property tax increase. So how do these people still come up where they're,
But their value of the home has increased as well when they had that ADU. That's like,
yeah, there is.
you just
But
got an
there's a very
assessment.
easy statute.
Your house used to be worth $300,000. Now it's worth $1 million, but the club wants you to pay another $5,000. People have a nervous breakdown. Like looking at the economic as a whole, when you add that unit on, you're really increasing your.
So there's some very easy statutes that are out there, tax exemption statutes that are out there that the municipality, quite frankly, is not using, that could at least give somebody a little bit of a break on their property tax. And when I'm saying a break, like the one that's out there, would make it, if the town voted to do so, the person who built the ADU could at least get $75,000 worth of property assessment off. So it's like a reduction. They get $500 a year. It's not much, but if they've constructed something within a 12-month period of the vote, then you could do this in statute for 3 years. And I mean, just that little bit could help somebody. They can pay for their propane for a month. I don't know. You know what I mean? So there's some small fundamental steps that could happen here with the support of the select board of taking this on.
Katrina, I think you're mixing up two. You've got two proposals, which are actually fundamentally different. And I would suggest that you separate the two proposals. They sound like they're the same because they're both using property taxes as a report.
My focus is on adding new units. The select board wants to incentivize landlords, but the EDC doesn't want to supplement the grants for that. So I think we have our answer. We just have to say no, right?
No, I think you're misunderstanding quite considerably. That you have two proposals.
Yes.
One is
right.
One is for the select board to what's it called when you set aside the tax? Reduce
Tax stabilization. Tax abatement.
Abatement to abate the increase in property taxes for.
Now the abatement's after the tax. It's not the right term. It's tax stabilization or tax exemption.
Fine.
Exemption.
Okay. A tax exemption. The first approach is to provide a tax exemption to someone who's building a new unit.
Correct.
That is exactly what we are doing using different words. And I think proposing that the town add to our incentive, which will presumably, one would assume if they think that will accelerate the increase of supply of new construction, then they should do that. The one second. The
Go ahead.
second, you're next. The second proposal is to provide a tax exemption for people who already have existing properties. And that, I think, is a less effective vehicle because of the significant uncertainty. And so I would just like, when we propose this, and it's fine with me if the housing, I mean, as long as the EDC comes along, but the housing working group present that, both of those proposals, that we just say that the EDC is, I would say, comfortable with the first one. It achieves our objectives, where we think we're already achieving the objectives. We think you would probably achieve more if the town added their funds to it. That would be great. On the second proposal, we don't feel that it supports our objective of increasing supply. But in answer to their question, this is how they could do it. And I would specify that it would be a tax abatement that the town would then, or just specify that it would be a tax abatement. And if you have a tax abatement, then the person who pays for that is clear.
Okay.
So, Joe.
And they may love that idea, and that's great if they do.
Right. Exactly, Joe.
Well, I have a very simple question, and I'm a little embarrassed at its simplicity because, it just divorces itself from all this creativity that's going on around me. But I'm just curious, would the increase in taxes that the property owner would experience, would it be so great if it was passed on to the tenant that it would discourage a tenant from renting that apartment? In other words, if the taxes go up $500 for the year, that's $10 a week. Is that going to be so much that it's going to discourage somebody from renting the apartment if the rent goes up that much?
Well, remember that we're fixing the rent,
Well, unfix it.
Yeah,
but
we
then
have
it
a
defeats
fixed
the object
amount.
of the exercise. Because we're trying to fix rents that, so
You know what I'm saying?
Go back
You're
to-
passing on,
back to the
if you're
big
passing on a few bucks to the, is it gonna be, I'm not saying, let me take that back. Is the amount that you pass on to the tenant so great that they say, no, it's too much, you can't afford it?
Well, right now, tenants
It's a
are
very
saying-
simple question, I know.
saying yes to much higher rents than
Yeah,
they would normally pay. I think that the point of this discussion is the proposal isn't clear enough, and we better go back and rewrite it to make it clear so that there's not all of so
it's
many.
pretty clear, if you just go up and rent a few bucks.
Well, I think that what I like, sorry, I don't know which of the two proposals you're talking about, Joe, but if you're talking about the one where we provide incentives, where there would
The
be a
one
tax,
that's already built.
right? So there are,
So he's saying,
there are no, for me, there are no numbers that would justify, sorry, for me, providing a financial incentive, no matter who provides it, to an existing landlord to not stop being an existing landlord is a much less effective way of achieving our objective, and therefore I would not put a penny against that. We have an obligation to answer the select board's question. I would put the penny against increase the other, one, which is to absolutely. But what Joe's question was about the proposal to incent existing landlords.
Yeah.
That does not achieve our objective. I would not support any funds from the EDC to go towards that because that's not our objective.
No,
However,
okay. So an answer to Joe's question.
And that's back to
don't-
my original comment that we've already said, no, we shouldn't do this.
Wait a minute.
Trina, 1 second, Jill, and then Trina.
So Joe, in answer to your question,
Yes,
this isn't about giving people tons of money. This is about showing some appreciation, I think. Because we could only be talking about a few thousand, not very much money, right? So one of the things we'll do is work out more
excuse me, Joe, but
examples.
I thought the whole objective was not, the whole objective is just to provide housing for workers.
No, it's to increase the supply of housing for workers.
Okay,
That-
I think that's,
No, that's when we say housing for workers, that's what we mean. We've
Yeah.
had that, we're all, sorry, 1 second, Trina first, and then.
And Patrick's also had his hand up.
Yeah,
for-
I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I just feel like we've answered the question about the EDC funds being used for current landlords And I think the answer has been that we do not want to do that, that the
That's my
EDC doesn't support that, and that we support the building of new units. But so I'm trying to figure out why we are still circling the drain on that topic.
Because Trina, because the select board, because we owe the select board two things. One is a proposal, and two is our opinion about the proposal. And so we can't, I don't think they asked us, how would you please develop a program to incent existing landlords?
Okay.
You've done that. I think we also owe them our opinion about that proposal, which is.
And our answer was to use tax stabilization, because you don't want to use EDC funds for them. So where else is the money going to come from?
It's not, Trina, it's that as a fundamental thing
Right.
from the EDC. It's not something that I believe we all agree on. That's the thing. But you answering their question is important, and you may have an idea that they love, and that's great. But saying whether or not we support that particular aspect of it is just what we're talking about. So
Right.
we support things that clearly increase new housing supply, whether the funds come from the town or Santa Claus or the EDC. We want new housing supply. We, at least myself and John, clearly struggle with the other part of the proposal, which we're saying separate them into two. But you still need to bring it to the select board your best shot to give them they can do what they want, right? I think that's great.
So Susie, Patrick, Susie, then Patrick, and then I don't know your name, sorry, and Joanne. And then we'll try to conclude. Susie, Patrick, Joanne.
Stabilization provided, housing for people.
I can't hear Susie.
Here.
Just hold on.
So I know that Joe, there was a young man who lived in an apartment close to the high school, and he lost his apartment because the landlord wanted to turn it into an Airbnb. And so he then he moved with his girlfriend over to Windsor. And personally, I think he's at a risk. We are at a risk of losing a worker, and it's hard to find workers. And so I think that if she had an incentive to keep him, would that, because we lost a workers' housing to an Airbnb, would this incentive combat that horrible trend?
Patrick, and then Joanne.
I've got two things. One is, do we understand why the select board asked this question?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It can because is it just because they thought it was unfair, or
People came to them and brought it up, and so they brought it up to us.
okay, so
It's
people
one
brought
And
it
that
up.
was also brought up in light of the fact that we were wanting to extend a little bit past our Woodstock borders
Into
to,
Bridgewater, right? Yeah.
yeah, and so that was no bueno unless we did something for the existing landlords.
Okay,
The
'cause
whole thing was insane, in my opinion. We
Well,
got Bridgewater got killed because of this part.
All right.
yeah, I would agree that with John and Todd that it's about creating new, and if you open this gate, you're going down a bad path because
But-
now you're going backwards.
Okay, so.
And there'll be
but
lots
to
of people.
So Patrick, to answer that, if it comes from taxes, then it's not coming from EDC grants, but there is something we have to stop. We have lost one unit already. There are other people who are considering this.
No, I can tell you this as a former lodging owner, somebody's going to go to Airbnb because they think they can make more money, and anybody who's doing that, it's because they think they can make more money. It has nothing to do with workforce housing or having a thing. They're looking solely for the purpose of making more money, because that's the reason. That's the reason you go to short-term rental.
So if you give them money, they have less incentive to do it.
You're
It's
only gonna
not
give them
enough money. It's not enough money. You make a ton of money.
Hold on. Sorry, Joanne, you're next. So Roger, can you give her the little?
Oh, yeah. Here you go.
So my question is, what prevents landlords from just saying, I'm not going to provide workforce housing, I'm going to provide an apartment for somebody who has enough money to live here?
Nothing.
And nothing. And that's been the problem. I've moved out Saturday will be 6 times in 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not sustainable. And
The solution to not enough housing, in my opinion, is more housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Need more development,
What we
need
do is
multi-unit
pay
housing.
for housing.
More house, that's right.
But in any event,
But so we don't all agree, because I think you also have to protect the housing you've got.
and we have no problem with Woodstock pursuing that. And I think that we have an obligation to give them an idea for how to pursue it, but you'd have to,
But it's our responsibility.
Let me put it differently. Until we find that the dollars that we spend on incenting new units are no longer effective, I will always prefer to, because every penny that we spend to incent an existing landlord is a penny we do not spend to incent new construction. So I'm actually not saying that we should or shouldn't. I'm not currently saying that we should or shouldn't give existing landlords an incentive. What I'm saying is, until the new build incentives prove to be ineffective, we should spend our money on our limited funds on that. As much as we need to. That's really the argument that I'm making now. So I'm kicking down the road the question of whether or not it's appropriate to spend money.
I'm kicking it down just for 2 months till we come to you with next year's proposal. When we look at what money has gone and what money we haven't managed to.
No, but I would allocate more money to the new build program. And
There's nobody coming. Nobody extra coming there's nobody coming who we can't fund.
okay, all right, well, that'll be interesting, Roger. Yeah, last comment, Roger, and then
Okay.
Yeah, this is very quick.
oh man,
A tax abatement for essentially taking away the rise in property values for building a new unit is revenue neutral to the town. It's a no-brainer. And it's obviously not, the EDC can recommend it or not recommend it.
it's revenue neutral to the town, not to the taxpayers.
But they're not arguing.
No, it's just a deference. It's a deference of that improvement being applied to the assessment.
Let's be clear.
There's no loss.
When we're talking about ADU,
Yeah.
all have the same
Right,
opinion.
we agree.
Yeah, all new
No,
units.
and that's why I'm saying, if you go
Yeah.
to the town and propose to the select board and propose that there be a tax abatement that offsets the rise in property value for someone having built an ADU.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's.
Yeah, we agree.
It's a no-brainer.
We agree. We all agree with that.
The other
Roger,
question is,
Yes.
what, if the EDC decides, and I think it seems like the spirit is against deciding to do this, to give people an incentive to maintain, an EDC incentive to maintain existing units, that goes on for the rest of history. You've encumbered that money forever.
Trina, there's a time limit, isn't there, Trina?
I don't know, they'd have to keep the rent, presumably.
Understand that, but then they're just gonna
Yeah.
raise it when they don't get that incentive anymore.
Usually
Look,
with
I think-
exemptions and stabilization, there's going to be a time limit on it, a beginning and an end. But the whole idea of the statute 3836, which is pretty much just a deference of the improvement, which is the new ADU value being assessed and for 3 years, you kind of put it on hold and then it ratchets it up.
Okay, so I think, Jill, your comment earlier, if I can draw this to a close, is why don't you come back to us next month with taking all of this into account and clarify what it is that oh, sorry, Marion, go ahead, Marion.
It's just a quick thought because we're not deciding today and we have some time to think about it. It feels very parallel to me to the idea of like hiring new people versus retaining employees. And there might be some efficiencies. And I think it's worth thinking about whether keeping housing maybe costs less than building new housing. And what I don't know the answer, but I'm just saying, since we're not voting on this now, it's something for us to think about.
I have no problem with the EDC rethinking our housing objective. I have no problem with that at all. I just feel like, I think, maybe I'm interpreting the history wrong. I think our objective was to increase the supply. So Yeah.
So may we go to the select with all of those revised in the next
Sooner.
few weeks? Because if we want to take this forward, we actually need something on the ballot
Oh,
in
sure.
March.
Okay, if the timing makes a difference, then fine.
So we could, but we wouldn't go with this because it's too confusing. We'll make it clearer and
Just reflect the discussion. I think if you reflect the
and
discussion
then
here.
at least we'll get I think we'll start to get the lawyer involved to find out how complicated this is or not. And then We'll know.
Does anyone have a problem with that approach?
No, as long as everyone understands that we support new housing without a discussion, you know, we're on new housing and reimbursing existing townsfolk who have local workers is something that we would need to discuss if we were to get on board. As long as that's clear, then I think, of course, we trust you to Jill and Trina to go and work with John and go up there and do your thing. I do.
But we know that we're deferring another discussion.
If you want us to support the second part of that.
Yeah.
Discussions about.
Yes, yes.
Say it again.
What to be talking about for next year end.
Okay, that's
At
fine.
least we'll know what the discussion's
Yeah,
about.
fine, good, okay.
Okay.
All right.
You know
thanks.
what? If arguing about more housing equals more housing, then this is the best arguing we've ever done. So
Right.
this is good stuff, you know, and we
Well said.
appreciate your work.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2020.
Thank you, Trina.
Thanks, Trina. Thanks, Joe.
Thank
20
you.
Thanks, Trina.
2024 community grants process. It's time to launch the process. I put forward a proposal that we simply keep the process the same. It sounds like with the exception of adding a question of how long do you think you would need to spend the funds or whatever, something like that. No, well, the sunset wouldn't be part of the application.
Are-
We'd
are
get
we-
part of the
Next
contract.
item is the.
Oh, it's the next, I have it out of the,
Insurance.
I have it in the wrong order. Sorry, my memo is not in the same order as the agenda. Sorry. Joanne, we can do yours then. Insurance costs for not-for-profit food vendors. The village trustees have asked a number of not-for-profit vendors to, and a for-profit vendor, or one, I think, to come onto the green during days where their food supply is limited in town. For the not-for-profit organizations, the cost of they don't make a lot of money in the cost, and Joanne is going to tell us a little bit about it, but the cost of the insurance kind of is a fixed cost, and all of a sudden now it doesn't make sense for them. So the village trustees have asked if we would subsidize the cost of insurance, which is $5 for the 8 days or 8 or 10 days of cost is $535 in total. And
Yes.
so we'll just, Joanne has waited patiently here to just tell us about this. So just take 2 minutes and give us a quick update. And do you have the little pod? Roger, sorry. Are you okay?
By the way, that microphone's working great.
Hi, I'm Joanne, the administrative assistant at North Chapel, the North Universalist Church down the street. And one of the trustees approached me about knowing that we are trying to fundraise for North Chapel for all of the programs that we provide, and asked if we were interested in doing this as a fundraiser for North Chapel. 4 days later, I heard from her that we may have this cost that would be attached to this. This is the first time that we're doing it. We don't know what our income will be on a daily basis because of the weather and everything else. And so we are asking for your assistance in covering these costs.
Okay. And there are other organizations, you're just representing Seton asked you to come, asked a couple, asked some of the vendors.
Has to come, but I
I'm
was-
here too. Hey.
Oh, Seton,
Hi,
sorry.
Seton.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize.
But
I have
better
a
hear from
question-
Joy.
I have a question about that. Is it possible to put a couple of these vendors together under one policy? Or does each one have to have a separate policy?
I mean, if they're willing to share. So
If they have a bunch of tables under, like a collective
the
of
challenge
10.
would be, is it needs to go under an organization. So that would mean that if somebody chokes on a piece of pie from
Yeah.
a PTO, then that means that the church is now liable for choking on the pie, right? Like, I don't think
Right.
you want to assume someone else's liability.
John,
Joe?
what about they just come to, they all come under the umbrella of the chamber, and the chamber is reimbursed or given money for the insurance of all of them. And the chamber can, they can go to the chamber and say, okay, we made $500. They give it to the chamber gives it to whatever organization that is fundraising, and the whole group of you, whether it be on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or multiple weeks, is all covered under one umbrella. Because it's under the auspices of the chamber.
Yeah,
Honestly, I wish we had talked about this beforehand. I was speaking with,
oh, wait, Beth,
Well,
just
muted, Beth.
muted yourself. Excuse me.
sorry. First of all,
Oh, no, Beth, there's
You're
a
muted again, Beth.
computer. We're gonna
Now?
bring in a lip reader.
Yeah,
We're gonna bring in a
right.
lip reader.
now,
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. The church has insurance. There can't be any nonprofits that don't have. I would find it difficult to believe that any organization with a board of directors and or trustees or deacons, whatever you call church people, doesn't have insurance. And all you do is call your insurance company and ask them to add the town or village as additionally insured. There is no extra cost to that. I just had a conversation with our insurance agent yesterday actually. So it's the town of Woodstock would be named as additionally insured with a waiver of subrogation, excuse me, Larry, on a primary and non-contributory basis. I'm not opposed. I mean, I support the church. They're a member. We would be happy if they had come to us to have applied for this permit for them. And John and I, or Seton and I, spoke quickly about this. Members can fall under our insurance if you need to, but it would be hard for me to believe that the church doesn't have insurance. What if somebody falls up the step?
Of course,
Going
we
in.
have insurance. I just don't know enough about it.
Oh,
Yeah,
you just
know.
you just need to call your insurance company and ask them to ask the town to add the town as additionally insured.
Okay.
Honestly.
Could I make a suggestion that Seton maybe, well, I'm not sure who to direct this to, but this to me, we're about to have a discussion about the preliminary results of the community survey. It's not going to surprise anyone that a lack of places to eat is one of the issues that is coming up. In fact, it's the issue that is most concerning to
Lack of
people.
what?
Sorry?
The lack of what?
Of places to eat
Oh,
is most concerning. Therefore, this becomes, I think, something that the EDC, I don't know whether we would want to address it or not. It depends on how much it would cost, but for $535, for the next 3 weeks, that seems something that we ought to approve. So I would propose that we just go ahead, despite what Beth said, but that we ask Seton or whoever you'd like to delegate it to just continue to investigate Beth's suggestion. And if you don't spend the $535 or some of it, that you just only ask, we would approve a grant of up to $535.
And
Yeah.
so, and just to add into that, to give you a full picture. So we obviously have the North Chapel. They're going to be there for several dates. And John, I sent you, I sent you a memo, and I don't know if you want to share that, or I can share it on my screen about what the breakdown is. So we've got North Chapel, but then we also have two PTO, or a PTO, and then the Woodstock High School, Spanish.
It doesn't matter. The total is
Yeah, no, but the point is that the PTOs and that the hockey boosters, the schools will not allow them to use their insurance. So they cannot get they do not have their own insurance.
All right,
So that's not an option for them.
Do you want to make a motion, John?
Yeah, so I would
$535 for everything.
total $535.
Yeah.
They're $80.
Let's get it done.
So I would move that the EDC allocate up to $535 to pay for the organizations that Seton submitted in her memo. It's
Yeah, not currently covered.
and that Seton would would work with any of organizations for whom Beth's idea might be possible to see whether or not they can be covered under their organization. If they can, we would ask that you make a good faith effort to reduce our costs, but we will allocate the money so that they can go ahead and, and plan for this food service.
Second.
Without that. Second, are there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Seton, is that, sorry, I should have asked before we voted. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And I can follow up with Joanne and Beth.
Okay,
Feed the
very good.
people, feed the people or they get angry.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, thanks.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, 2024 community grants process. I guess maybe the easiest way to say this is, does anyone want to suggest a change other than adding the question that we talked about earlier? Otherwise, I think we could, there's some little bit of technical work. We just have to change some dates. We do need to announce a schedule, which we should talk about briefly. But I think the first step would be to open it up for applications. And to remind ourselves, we can always change this, but to remind ourselves that we said we would be reducing a 3-year runway, down, so that last year we did 100,000. We actually granted 97, I think. This year we talked about reducing it to 70,000. Well, we decided to reduce it to 70,000, subject to our overturning that. So, and I don't know that we need to discuss or debate that tonight. I think actually a better time to do it would be either at the annual meeting or just before. But I think what we need to do today is, are we ready to, are there any suggested changes to the process we used last year? Does anybody have any? Okay, good.
Mike and I are both new and have not done the annual meeting like that, so I'm not really sure what the process was.
Okay, that really at this stage, so the process was that last year was really just an application and then an annual meeting where we review all of the applications at once and make decisions as to which grants to provide. At this stage, what we're really deciding is just the application. And we have an automated tool. All we do at this point, we have to change the dates on the tool. It has to say 2024. Whatever. But other than that, we just announced that the applications are open. I would just use the same verbiage we used last year to announce it. It's early October. I would guess that by October 15th, we could announce this. If we wanted to have the annual meeting before the end of January, then October 15th, people would have, and we could ask them to submit the applications by December 15th or December 20th. And we could have our meeting 3 weeks later.
The only thing is that this is ridiculous, but can we have the meeting not in Can we have it in February maybe? The reason I say is because there was no snow last year and it takes a whole weekend, and this year it's going to snow like crazy. And I really want to go skiing.
Go skiing. And we'll all miss you, Todd, won't we, guys?
I'm just saying, we've had it later than January before that I've been to this rodeo.
How did you preface that statement? This is ridiculous.
Well, everything I say is
agree.
ridiculous, but does anyone like February?
For the future, Tom, by the way, you don't need to preface your statements with "this is ridiculous."
Exactly.
Yeah.
I missed all the good
It's
stuff.
fine.
I think
Does anyone have does anyone have any comments about that, about the scheduling of the annual?
I think Todd should go skiing anytime he wants to. Let's have a meeting when we always do.
We only did it in January 1 out of the last 3 years. We could do it in February if someone wants to.
but I think we did it later just because we were behind the ball. I think for most people, trying to get it done earlier is better.
Yes.
Michael, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I think I'm one of the only members or the only member that's actually gone through the process from the other side. From it. So I've been trying to reflect on, from an applicant's perspective, what was missing. I think the number one critique I had for it was the lack of ability to communicate at that annual meeting as a applicant, or really much time to give and take before that meeting. And so from my perspective, the conversation kind of like drifted and meandered and went into like not the spirit or the heart of the grant for my application. And I could have given some like answered some questions that people were circling around, but didn't know the obvious answer because there wasn't the opportunity to engage the applicant in it. So just my feedback to the process. I'm sure this has been discussed and debated in the past, so I hope I'm tipping through a graveyard a little bit.
No.
But yeah,
I think it's very helpful. Susie?
Wasn't there a step in there where you would have different members of the EDC talk to these people so you could address some of those? Did that not happen? I thought there was someone going to talk to every single one of the applicants.
There was that step. It wasn't to every single one of them. It was, as I remember it, it was kind of hit or miss, but there was that step.
And that started last year, I think.
No, I
And I
don't think.
think, Michael, you were 2 years ago, right?
There was a couple of
Yeah, it was
years
2 years
we
ago.
haven't discussed that.
Yeah.
So we made some improvements from 2 years ago, but Michael, to your point, I agree there's always room for improvement, but we did do that where we started like reaching out, but the mechanism for how we reached out wasn't sort of an official thing, I don't think.
Right.
Not 2 years ago, no.
I think what we could do is what we could do is to provide some capacity in early January. If the proposals come in by middle of December or the 20th, just anything before you go on vacation. We could have some like open, I don't know what the word is, office hours, where there are 3 EDC members, and we set up 3 or 4 of those, where people commit to spend 90 minutes at town hall, and if anyone wants to sign up, in advance if anyone's coming. You couldn't just
That's a good idea.
Todd, didn't we talk about doing that?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the reason for doing it that way, Michael, is that not everyone not everyone will take advantage of it, and many people will not be taking advantage of it because they're unprepared to do it and won't waste our time. Sure. But it would give you the opportunity, or someone like you, to come forward and to have those discussions, realizing that it would achieve a better, that you would likely get a better consideration if you.
We set up some EDC office hours for this
Did you do it
period.
at Suicide 6, Todd?
Yeah, that's where I'll
there
be.
you go. I love that suggestion.
Yeah, Pasadena.
Well, I want to see, if I understood, where we're at,
Hold on, Marion. Go ahead.
if I understood what you were saying is that, you heard, we had the sort of the 2-part process, right? We asked questions and then we went and we talked through all the applications. And I think what I heard you say was that you heard questions come up in that discussion that you could have answered. And I don't know that the office hours solves that.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
It's still community engagement though, which is good.
The problem, the problem.
She makes a very, very good point.
It is a very good point.
But
However,
maybe let me counter it and just say that maybe in those office hours, if we have discussion to put some questions or could have some review of what their application is in advance, maybe those more obvious questions could come up in that conversation, right? So it's not left to the last meeting.
Michael, I think, again, I think some of what you experienced 2 years ago was corrected last year, and last year you would have had the opportunity to have that dialogue because there was definitely room. There was that dialogue last year. So I think we fixed that part of the problem. And I think that this piece that we're just talking about kind of helps us be prepared to support the community member in their application process. So we know what support they need when they come in to sit down,
Deborah, I don't know that that's exactly correct. I think what Marion is talking about is, I believe, and I don't, none of us seems like.
I was saying Michael, not Marion. Yeah.
No. Marion's point was that last year, I think, anyway.
I think.
We had deliberations, right? We had questions and answers, And then we had deliberations, like some other boards, and, technically, when you're doing deliberations, the applicants can't talk. It's deliberations, only EDC members can talk. And what I think, Michael, correct us, are you saying that during those deliberations, Marion would say, well, I really don't think this is worth it if it's only $10, and it was only $5, but you couldn't say because we were in deliberations, and Marion kept saying it was
I
10.
said, I wish I knew, whether this really worked, and you knew that you had proof,
Right,
data to
exactly.
show that it worked, and yeah.
So in other words, go ahead, Deborah.
But I remember last year, in those moments, that the applicant was in the room and we would turn to them and ask them.
Michael was 2 years ago. That's back
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, I mean, so I do remember as we deliberated, when those questions came up, we were able to turn to somebody and say, was it 5 or was it 10?
You think that's right?
I think that's right. yeah.
Okay, well then if
Yeah.
that's the case, then the suggestion of office hours would address. Right.
And to further, what Michael's saying is that if he was able to riff with us, he wouldn't
Right.
feel blindsided by some of the things that might seem obvious to us, but didn't seem obvious to him for whatever reason, or vice versa, and just have the process be more fluid and effective.
So if that's the case, then does the concept that we could figure out the details, but basically the concept of an early January office hour period. So applications by December 15th or 20th. Let's just say the 15th. That gives people 2 months if we get this out within 10 days or within a week.
Have coffee or something, and people can come in and
Office hours is sometime in the first half of January, and the annual meeting is sometime in the second half of January. Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
John, you're talking about office hours with the full EDC or
just a couple.
No.
Okay,
in there.
so then I think we should make sure that the full EDC has an opportunity to ask questions for that, the group that's going to be doing the office hours. Because
Yes.
there's no point in having the 3 people's opinions there, and we find that 3 other people who weren't there have other questions. That's
Well,
all.
the solution to that can be that those other people agree that I think that submitting questions in advance, knowing that Michael is coming on Thursday to office hours, submitting questions for Michael's application to that group would be great. That of course, the people can always show up if their questions were actually important to them.
Too many.
Unless
Unless
you're
we have to warn it, right? Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Can I ask Todd?
So,
Todd,
but yes, so Larry, yes, a vehicle for submitting questions for applicants. And also it doesn't have to just be office hours. We could also submit questions, by email directly to the applicants. We could just assemble the questions.
Yeah, but we tried that last year, basically, right? And a lot of people didn't take advantage of it. So I think that the more, Woodstock approach would be to have a cup of coffee ready and people can come and sit down.
All right, Joe. So Larry,
I'm
yes,
just
we will
curious,
make sure to do
I'm
that.
just curious, Todd, are you gonna participate in the office hours?
Yes,
or you gonna
yes,
go
I
skiing?
hate skiing. I just didn't want to hang out with you. I hate skiing.
So Larry, are you okay that we'll basically have a way we'll have a process where people can submit questions to whoever's hosting the office hours? Okay. Any other changes to the process? Thank you, Michael, for suggesting that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I'm happy. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. Okay, so October 15th announcement using the same verbiage as last year, December 15th deadline, office hours first half of January, annual meeting second half of January.
Great.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
What's the number? It's 70 this year? 66? What is it?
What we said was 70,000, 100,
70.
You know what, why does it 75 stick in my head? Wasn't it 75?
No, it was 70, 170, 30. I remember, I remember numbers. I don't remember anything about people or process, but I remember numbers. Okay, preliminary results of the community survey on tourism.
This is where we get to do citizens' comments?
Sure.
So I asked a lot of people if they filled it out, and they said, no, you only put it in once to the, to listserv.
No, 3 times.
No, it was in there a bunch, yeah.
Okay, I only saw one, okay, but a lot of people that I talked to said they didn't know, never heard of it.
We got 270 responses so far.
10%.
It's 10% of the entire population. It's a bigger percentage of the adult population.
Pretty good.
I don't know of any survey or actually any process. that
Biggest
would-
survey ever.
26 years that I've had a house here where there's 270 people participated.
Oh.
So,
Not even that many people cared about the children.
Cared about flower pots.
In any event, okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath. This is not your fault, Susie, but you triggered me.
There, John, just take it. There's always someone who didn't hear it or didn't read it.
No. I'm just gonna tell you about this process. So someone asked earlier that would we please send, how are we going to promote this? So we said, we'll put it in the listserv. They said, well, that's what about people don't get a listserv? I said, fine. We will mail a postcard to every. Who raise your hand actually if you got a postcard?
I don't have a mailbox.
I
I got one.
We didn't get one.
Yeah, you.
I haven't gotten mail in like 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
I didn't get it until yesterday. I got it.
So first of all, I just want to, let me just simply summarize. There are lengthy federal statutes about sending out postcards. I believe I complied with those statutes. The first time,
FBI guy coming up the stairs.
the first time I tried to comply, I did not comply. I didn't spend any money, but I figured out.
Questioning your postcard mailing.
No. I'm just saying that one reason why. Anyway, I think first of all, I think the answers that we have we have enough responses to be able to draw the kind of conclusions that I'm going to try to draw tonight, which is really just at the simplest level, we have an issue and we need to kind of investigate it further rather than we can set it aside or the world is coming to an end, which I would describe as the two ends of the spectrum. Some people might think, this is just a handful of people coming to EDC meetings complaining. And at the other end of the spectrum, it's, this is a disaster. Woodstock is about to, disappear. And I think the data basically shows that it's somewhere in the middle, and it's enough in the middle that we need to continue to work on the experiences that the local community is going to have.
John, you sound a little hangry right now. You should just eat a sandwich,
Oh, no, I'm not. Susie.
Oh, you can't find one. You can't find one.
Right. So anyway, look out for this. They lost these. For 10 days, they lost them.
Oh, my packages were lost for 10 days.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. However, I am now good friends with both the postmaster and the person who runs the postal plant in White River Junction.
Yep.
Whom were involved in the search for my postcards. Anyway, they went out. Okay.
Not in mail in 2 days, so maybe I'll get one tomorrow.
No. Yeah, hopefully. I just got it. I think I got it today.
I got 3 weeks ago's Vermont Standard 2 days ago.
Yeah. All right. So I've sent out, so everyone here, since there's only Susie and Roger, so everyone on the EDC, and I think Beth also, so received a copy of the kind of the summary of the results. There in that document I sent you, there were 235 respondents. The postcards then started to come out, and there are now 270. We got another 35 over the last few days. What's interesting about that is that the response rate was much faster with the listserv. So I'm just guessing that a lot more people read the listserv than read their mail. Oh, Carol says I got my card yesterday. Yeah. I've analyzed the responses prior to 3 days ago versus since 3 days, and they're not significantly different. It doesn't change the conclusions. So I just want to kind of give you some very high level summary here. All of this is, well, almost all of this is in the data that you have in your packet. A couple of things are new. Again, that's just the nature of analysis. You can't stop doing analysis when you send out the memo. So I've kept doing it. So this is something that I think this chart is actually in your package. This basically talks about benefits. Oh, by the way, just in case you missed it in the memo, the question about whether or not starting with positive questions or starting with negative questions turns out to have had no impact. We managed to develop a technology to allow half the people to respond with a survey with the positive questions first, and the other half of the people to respond with the survey with negative questions first. The two groups have essentially identical results. So fortunately, that didn't turn out to be an issue. This shows first the positive. I have to start with something in this presentation, so I'm starting with the positive. I can't start with both. I'm teasing. So this may be a little bit hard to see, but the blue bars at the bottom are the percentage of people who say that tourism benefits Woodstock a great deal. The orange is benefits it to some extent. And so you can see that basically everyone understands that there's some benefit, mostly a significant benefit to tourism, to helping people, helping local stores and restaurants survive. 80% of the people, for the most part, think that other things to some extent benefit. So people basically understand that Woodstock benefits from tourism. There is a recalcitrant group that doesn't think that that's the case, and there's different aspects of benefit, but fundamentally, the community understands that there are benefits. And that's all we're going to talk about, the positive. At the same time, about 40% of the respondents say that they regularly experience some of the negative effects. And the blue, again, working from the bottom, the blue is they experience whatever the particular negative effect daily. The next category is weekly, then monthly. And then the yellow and the blue at the top are only during peak events, days, or rarely or never. So you can sort of look at the bottom two as regularly, and the gray as in the middle, and the yellow and the blue at the top as not very often. And so you can see that about 40% is particularly about getting a reservation at a restaurant, finding a parking spot, and traffic jams. You've got sort of 40% of the people saying, this happens to me either daily or weekly. Yeah, Susan?
It is significant that only 38% of people said rarely or never for inappropriate behavior by visitors. That means that over 60% at least some point have experienced inappropriate behavior. So that's an issue.
All of these are, I think that as we go forward, one of the things we're going to need to decide is how many of these issues, which of these issues are actionable by the EDC or by other parts of the town, which ones should the EDC focus on, and so forth. We're going to, that my hope is that this is the beginning of a process to pursue it. It does give us some direction. There is there also, by the way, is, I think, well, for sure, there is some expansion. I don't know there must be some term for this in surveys. For example, one respondent basically said under inappropriate behavior that he or she observed someone your public urination daily. That means 365 days. Right. So I think people, however, that there's going to be some of that in here, but these numbers are big enough. Embellishment, maybe, yeah. Or
I'm
just
not understanding the question, because I haven't seen it. I've complained about it a lot. This year, I have not seen any public urination.
There we go. Our trend is positive. All right. In any event, I think the point is that however you count the, daily, weekly, even monthly is something that we should care about. Now, whether we can do a lot about some of these things or a little or nothing in some case, or whether we can completely solve them, I think we can't just set this aside and say, this is just a handful of people complaining. This is pretty widespread. Even thinking that maybe people who have had negative experiences are more prone to answer a survey like this because it gives them a chance to say what they're thinking. Even that, I think these are big numbers of people. This is, this group down here, this is 100, I think,
I think it's all great information. Now, I really don't know personally what to do about it.
Well, we're going to come to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So lastly, this is experience, and this is the degree to which people are bothered. Not exactly the same thing. In fact, you'll see in a minute how it's not precisely the same thing. But about 25-ish% of people are bothered a great deal by these problems. And that's, I think, and then another 35 to 50% are bothered somewhat. Now, this is something that you haven't seen. This is an analysis that I did after sending the memo out, but I just want to sort of show it to you. This shows the frequency. This is rarely or peak days only, the lowest, rarely. This is monthly, and this is weekly or daily. And then this shows the extent to which they're bothered. Not at all, bothered somewhat, bothered a great deal. So wow. even people who experience, the people who experience these problems weekly or daily, not surprisingly, 75% of them are bothered somewhat or a great deal. But even the people who are only experiencing it rarely or on peak days are bothered by it. Half of them are not bothered by it at all, but 60% of them are somewhat bothered. And interestingly, this group up here is bothered a great deal, even though they rarely experience it. I don't know what you would call that segment, but
You call it voice, people staying home because they don't feel like they can go out.
yeah,
Be an explanation.
it could be, yeah. It could also be that if we shut the town down and reverted it to 1930s, they would still be bothered. My instinct is those 8 people are just bothered. But in any event, the point is that people, this is the number of people here. This is a lot of people who say that they're bothered somewhat. And 50 people or 60 people, 55 people are, bothered a lot. Whoops, sorry. So what do we do about it? I think.
Wait. What does bothered mean? Does
Whatever.
it mean that,
Whatever the recipient response thinks.
it reduces their tendency to go downtown? Does it?
It means what the person was thinking when they answered the question.
Yeah.
Did you ask that question? Because that's an
Yeah.
important question.
What does bothered mean?
Yeah, what does it mean to be bothered by
Are
it?
you bothered?
It says,
We
tourism and crowds, does it reduce people's willingness to participate in civic life?
We did not ask that question.
Yeah.
We did not.
I'm just curious. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to know what do you mean by that? That means you don't want to go downtown? Is that what it means? Or does it mean that, you're fed up with the town and just?
Subjective question like that, but you can ask, does this prevent you from going?
You can ask I think the questions we ask, if what you're trying to determine is, should we figure out what to do about these things or not?
Yeah.
That's the question we're trying to determine.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So that's why, So I think the conclusion is yes, we should do something about these things. And so the next step is, what does that look like? And so, right. So these are the questions we asked, the things we asked about: restaurant access, parking availability, traffic, crowded sidewalks, long lines, and inappropriate behavior. This is sort of roughly in the order in which they were felt to be important. They're all, as Susie points out, there's still a good number of people who are concerned about inappropriate visitor behavior. Not a majority, a lot concerned, but still enough.
Yeah.
But these numbers up here are the ones which had the highest level of concern. There were a large number of open-ended comments, 950 individual items from about 100 people. So if someone might say, I don't like the traffic and I do like having a job because of this tourism and I don't like the food, whatever, that counts as 3. So I have not gotten through the 947 yet. But broadly speaking, these are another 6 or 7 things for which we don't have measurement other than people mentioned them. Stores not catering to locals, diversity. No, sorry, this is not, this is wrong. This shouldn't be there. Pedestrian behavior, bike riders, pet behavior, parking behavior, trash overflow. There's a couple of other.
Pet behavior, dog barking or peeing or.
Yeah, anything that a dog could do was being complained about.
So it doesn't have to be a dog.
So, but I think the reason I put this list up is I don't think we have any data to suggest. We did not ask about these things on the right. I don't think on the right, this list on the right, from the comments, we don't have data to suggest how important those issues are.
Those were unsolicited comments.
Correct, exactly.
Well, they were solicited, you were.
They were unsolicited topics. They were they came up, basically there were 2 questions on the positive and the negative side. These are just the negatives.
Yeah.
It was, is there anything else other than the things on the left?
Yeah, what else is on your mind?
Well, no, is there anything else that negatively affected you from tourism? And this is what the list was.
And John, that was from half the people?
No, I think there were about 100 out of 270 who made negative comments, and about, no, it's less than half the people, and slightly more made negative comments than positive, but
like a third.
There were a good number of both.
So this seems like it's a, this comments thing, and even to a certain degree, the inappropriate visitor behavior. Sounds like, you know, the next step should be like a focus group to get a better understanding of that. And I would imagine that people who live along the tourist route had more issues with, like, it would, you know, like, would have more issues with inappropriate behavior than perhaps somebody who lives away from
Right.
tourist traffic. So getting that kind of granularity will help.
I mean, your house
We
versus
have-
my house.
We have that granularity. The overall sentiment, which is not, you're asking a more specific question, but the overall sentiment between people who live in the village and people who live outside the village was exactly the same. It was identical.
But I'm talking about in the village,
With,
like within the village, people who live, like my house is right along the street, right? So I'm likely to experience
yes,
drunk tourists climbing into my garden than somebody who lives.
who doesn't have a garden where people are walking. Agreed. Right.
And I promise
So-
I'll never do it again.
Was you.
To me, right. So to me, how we should proceed is, I would like to suggest, and this is just, I'm just one person, but I've just sort of wanted to put this forward, that we basically, well, let me sort of skip over here. That we basically reflect on these questions, and at our next meeting, try to decide exactly what to do. Between now and then, what I would like to do is, because we promised, is get the other surveys launched, because I think the visitor survey in particular, well, both surveys I think are going to be very important. But I think the visitor survey is going to be along these lines. It's going to either confirm or not confirm what we all think visitors are thinking.
Yep.
And hold a public meeting to share the results of this survey. And depending on the timing of the visitor survey, the two together, if we think we can get it done. I wouldn't like, if we're gonna have to wait a week or 10, we have to talk, Greta, we have to talk to figure out what the timing of getting the visitor survey out is. But I think we need to think about what should we try to accomplish, which of the concerns that have been raised are feasible to address. Here's a great example, traffic. I mean,
Yeah, what can we do about that?
right, if we decide that we can't do anything about it,
Yeah.
what would we do? Let's just take two things, parking and restaurants. I mean, one can imagine, I think, quite significant impact that we could have on either or both of those issues. What might it cost to do that? This is work that we'll need to do. What process, how should we go about answering what should we try to accomplish? What should we do? Is this an EDC role? I think for some of the concerns it is. Traffic, I think it isn't. You know, who else should be involved? Should we be involving the planning commission or this, obviously the select board? Should we be involved the village trustees who don't normally have a role in our work? Are there other folks? How should the community be involved? Should we break up, you know, should there be a parking team and a restaurant team and or should whatever, lots of different options. And when should we do this? Should we start now? I think so. What if we're not done by when the marketing funding runs out at the end of February? I don't think we will be done. And so what should we do? I don't think what we should decide, I don't think we should figure out this year. We should not figure out the answer to that question in the meeting. I think we need to figure out the answer to the question, what if we're not done? What if we don't know these things before that? And should we pursue multiple concerns or one?
Can I ask a quick question? I'm not clear on what you were
Yes.
just saying.
Okay, let me, I think it's because I skipped a page, and so let me go back and explain it. The reason I'm asking that question is I think what this data suggests that we need is that we need to rethink the specifics of what we've been calling our marketing objective. We've been saying that we want to market Woodstock. I think what we want to say is something that's a little bit more nuanced than that. I think what I would like us to say, and I'm not suggesting we decide this tonight, is that what we want to do, that these are our 5 priorities, right? Increasing supply of workforce housing, childcare supply, rejuvenating, supporting and grow local events, and marketing Woodstock. I think what we ought to say is instead keep 2 through 5 the same. Number 1 is to develop a vibrant tourism economy that provides visitors, residents, and merchants with an excellent experience. And what I think that means in practice is that we would continue to have an objective of marketing Woodstock, because without Woodstock, you can't have a vibrant, without marketing Woodstock, you can't have a vibrant tourism industry. However we do that, whatever we have the right platform, how much we spend on it, whatever. But that in addition to that, we have another aspect of our tourism priority, which is improving the experience of those three segments, making sure that the merchants have a good experience, making sure the residents have a good experience, making sure the visitors have a good experience. And I think, as I said in my memo, that every dollar we spend on improving the experience, we can't spend on either marketing Woodstock or childcare or whatever. We have a finite sum, and any dollars we spend on marketing Woodstock, we can't spend on improving the visitor experience or the resident experience or childcare or whatever. And so that's why, Roger, I link this to our February discussion, is that I think that we need to have a tourism, I think we need to have a tourism priority and a tourism budget and allocate dollars to the two parts of tourism. Previously, we've been mostly, almost entirely not entirely, because we did like Teagle's Landing, which has really improved the experience. But we've spent significantly more money on marketing Woodstock. And depending on the answers to these questions, what should we try to accomplish? You know, for example, if we decide to build an underground parking garage, I don't think we're going to have any money left for marketing or for anything else, by the way. And I don't think we're going to build an underground parking garage. So I think the reason
to be shingled,
the reason why I brought up this point about what if we're not done is, I think based on this survey, there's no way that we will be able to do in February what we did last year, which is, look, our choice is to shut the platform down or to spend $100,000, which is sort of the minimum it takes to run this particular platform. I don't think at the last meeting last year, what we said was we have to do it because we don't have a plan B. We don't have a plan C. There's either shut it down to zero or run it at 100,000, which is minimum. I don't think with these results, that will work this year. And so I think we have to start figuring out
Plan B. That's what you suggest.
Plan C. Plan A was Plan A was funded. Plan B was shut it down.
Yeah, on Plan C. Okay.
I understand. I'm just saying that that at the last year we didn't have Plan C. And I'm not saying we should pursue Plan C. I'm not saying we should pursue Plan A or B. There's no dollars put in these boxes and so forth. I'm just proposing that one of the things that we do, one of the questions we start to think about now in October, is that what if we're not done answering these other questions by February? What if we don't know yet what other funds we need for the experience side? So anyway, those are my thoughts. And this is how I think. Again, we don't have to answer these questions tonight, but I just want to introduce these to you all, reflect on these. And so at our next meeting, we can really dig into this and decide how to do it. Joe.
My feeling is simply, by virtue of the fact that we conducted these surveys, what we've done by conducting these surveys, and we wouldn't have done if we hadn't, is we are opening up conversation about alternatives to the marketing program that we've already established, and other alternatives of way of handling what goes on in our town, in terms, recognizing that we are a tourist-based economy, okay? Recognize that and having a conversation around that now, which we never did before at this level. And I think it's been worth every bit.
Hold on a second.
It's been worth every bit of energy, time, and if whatever little money we spent on conducting these surveys. It's been well worth it. And I applaud the whole concept.
I'm gonna say Susie. Sorry, Todd, and then Susie.
Yeah, I think if we do discuss a Plan C, it has to have a lot of heads up on what the stopgap funding amount might be, because that's what we had to do in a previous session where we just allocated, I think, like it was 40,000 or something to keep it going for X amount of time. So I think whoever's running this machine needs to start thinking about that sort of sooner than later, so that, you know, we're not caught off guard at a last minute meeting where it's going to be turn the faucet off or not, and not have a number on and a cause and effect of what that number means. You know what I'm saying?
Disagree. I think we should come up with the ideas first and then discuss about the money and what we can afford, what we can't afford, or how much of the idea that we can implement. The
Doesn't work
ideas
that way.
should come first.
Doesn't
No,
work
no, I think that, I don't think you're disagreeing. I think we're talking about developing a Plan C.
Yeah.
Knowing what Plan C would cost, not whether we should do it or not. These ideas.
Yeah, but I think the ideas come first, then we can decide if we can afford it or not.
I think one of the issues I have with this discussion is it's always a given that, you know, Woodstock is a tourist town. Woodstock is a town where tourism is important, but so are all the people, like half the people on the call like us, who work remotely. And we bring in a lot of money from out of state, in my case, out of the country, and I bring it in and I spend it in here. And in terms of tax contributions, I mean, residents are an extremely important part of the economy. And so I just would like all these discussions to be based on, that residents are as equally important to the economy as tourism.
Hold on a second. Roger.
So I have a couple of points, and one, I think all these are great questions, and to be honest, I'm much more impressed with the outcome of this survey than I thought I would be, so congratulations. I think what you're lacking a bit is a little bit of contextualization. I think at the last budget meeting I went to, I think you made a very smart point, which is if this town is going to be able to afford what it needs to do, it has to grow its population. It's very questionable to me whether the town can grow its population only based on a real estate and a tourist economy, especially when people are spending multi-millions of dollars on houses and then spending other multi-millions of dollars fixing up those houses. So one thing that I think needs to be added to the conversation is, how do we diversify this economy? How do we, and I realize that's a very hard question. So that I think we need to really work on diversifying the economy as part of this entire conversation. And again, it's a long-term thing, and all of the housing things obviously are going to affect that, because how do you diversify the economy when nobody can afford to buy a house? Then the other thing about, as you know, I have been non-supportive of most of what the EDC has done in terms of marketing. I think it's been ineffective and highly expensive for what you get. I sent you sometime after February Plan C.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting it to be adopted, but I'm going to suggest that on marketing, you get back to basics. You spend about $45,000 a year running a website, doing some outreach, doing whatever kind of ads you can do on social media or elsewhere. And it can be much cheaper and much smarter if we get back to the basics on what we're doing in marketing. And then you have more money to spend on
I have no idea what we're
whatever
doing.
is appropriate for the EDC to mitigate some of the downsides of tourism.
All right, let me just suggest, Patrick, sorry, I see your hand is the same color as the lighting, so I may have missed you before, but I'm going to call him Patrick. But I just want to say, after Patrick's comment, I'm sure he's going to want to comment on this. Let's keep, after this, his comment, let's keep the discussion of what the right marketing program is not for tonight, because
Okay.
But would you share the plan? Greta is now on the marketing committee, as is Patrick. Would you share that plan with Greta and Patrick?
Sure. I don't know if they have their emails. Are they on the website?
Yeah, I'll make sure you.
Okay.
Patrick, what did Patrick?
Yeah, make sure you get my new one, because the Sleep Woodstock one's no longer.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Just FYI, the program that we set up does do a lot of marketing, does do a lot of ads, does all of that stuff, emails. It does a lot. I don't think people truly understand what it does and what we're building it to do now, which is to help advertise events and specifically, and to help advertise businesses specifically, particularly on the times when the businesses say they really need help. and it's $100,000 to run it. And I do agree with you, Roger. I'd agree with you before. The website needs work. And we've been working on the content all year long, cleaning the pages up and stuff. I personally don't like the platform it's on. I think it's cumbersome. I think it's hard to navigate. That's a different issue. But just keep in mind, there's not a stopgap. You either are going to do the program or you're not, because they're not going to do it unless they have a commitment for a year, because it just doesn't make sense for them to do that.
I
So
agree.
just keep that in mind, right?
It's a yes or no question.
Right. Sorry, Susie, and then Mary.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna.
Susie.
I think we should talk about, in this whole discussion, how do we build resiliency into the economy? I personally think that setting a goal, like, that the local stores make a attempt to get 50% or so of their revenues from locals, or something like that. I mean, just building resiliency, and I think that one of the ways to do that is to make sure that locals do want to shop downtown.
So I think that I think the most important thing to agree to tonight, and we don't have, is for Greta and Patrick also, but Greta, as the official EDC member, to make sure that by February, we have a range of plans, understanding that, Patrick, that some of those plans may not include continuing to run the platform. It may be, something that Roger was suggesting. I'm not opining on what to do. I don't have enough information at all to opine. I'm just saying, I just want to be clear that we need to have a choice. We need to have a third choice between run the platform, targeted, whatever the platform's going to be targeted to, businesses, events, individual visitors, whatever, or not run it. There's no question. We all agree that those are the two options with the platform, because class 4 isn't rationally going to they're only going to do one of those two things. So we may need to have a third. We may need to have a third option.
I don't think anybody's questioning.
No one is. I know. I think we're in agreement on that, right? I just want to make sure. Greta, do you want to comment?
Yeah, just to say that I'm just getting caught up now with the class 4 people. I just met Tim, our particular point person, yesterday via Zoom, and I will definitely, I already said that to him. One of the things we have to do is really make sure we're prepared for early 2024, and knowing that there are some different options. And if it's not with class 4, then we'll definitely have a plan C.
Okay.
Charles also, John and I had a really good meeting with Charles Kahn from class 4, and he's definitely on the same page with so many of the, he's a local and on the same page with a lot of us, thinking that the website isn't doing any justice to the town. And that is definitely one thing that needs a lot of investment for next year. And that's where I'll leave it.
Earlier, I just want to quickly comment. Earlier, I said diversify whatever shouldn't be on the list. I was misremembering what the word diversify meant. It meant exactly, Roger, what you and Susie, what you were talking about resilience or diversifying the economy. A number of people made the points that we need to find a way to, or that they wanted the economy, they wanted the economy to serve locals and not be just based on tourism and real estate. Yeah.
Pandemic and the flood, where,
Right. So I think that even though we didn't ask that question, it did come up in some comments, and I agree that we don't have to decide this tonight, but I am inclined to support. What I'm imagining is several issues that we decide we can deal with. I think they should include parking. I think they should include food. I think they could include or should include diversifying the economy. I might be just those three. We'll have that discussion at the next meeting. if it's okay, because it's 8:20. But I will say that the nature that discussion about diversifying the economy is, I think, going to be very interesting and very different from parking and food.
Without a doubt.
Because I think all of us I hope, would agree that with some amount of money, we can really have an impact on the first two. I personally feel very strongly that Woodstock has zero options. This is my personal belief, that we have no options with respect to diversifying the economy, that people of communities of our size don't get to decide or even have a vote as to what our economy is. The global and the national economy impose on us what our economy can be. And you either get something, in our case, real estate and tourism, or you get nothing, and you're Bridgewater. Yeah, no. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion, and it's going to be very different in its nature from the other two. But I think we need to discuss it, because I think that it relates to, there's lots of different ways of people saying this, like, why can't I buy a dish towel and what they mean is, why can't I buy a dish towel locally when I can park right in front of it and pay the same price I do?
Exactly.
But that's what they mean. And anyway, in event, I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think that there are actually some things that we could do to deal with part of this problem. So I have some, so it's going to be, anyway, sorry, I'm ranting here. I think it's going to be very interesting. So I think next time, the most important things to do now are please digest that last page of, these are the questions we need to think about. How do we proceed from here? What do we focus on? Which issues? How do we do it? Who do we need to be involved? And I think the other thing so we're preparing for that a month from now. And the other thing is to give Greta and Patrick enough time to say, okay, look, you've got about 4 months. If there's a possibility, we're going to be right in the middle of that whole thing in February, and we're not going to be in a position. We're going to have to decide, is it the plan A, plan B? That was our decision last year. I'd like us to have a plan C this year in case we decide that plan A or plan B is not the right one. So that's really all is everyone on board with that outcome of tonight?
Yep. Yes.
And that, by the way, is what I think the purpose of the survey was. And I think that for that purpose, we have enough respondents, we have enough questions.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Right. That's
Great.
yeah, right. That's what we needed to get to for now.
Hey,
I
John,
still can't believe that Roger liked the survey. It's
He
fascinating.
didn't say he liked it. He didn't say like it. He said it exceeded his expectations.
That's true. Good point.
Not the same. That's not the same thing.
He was a little blue in the chart. He was a little blue.
John, one of the things that I think we need to do too is have a point where Greta and I can describe to the EDC board what exactly we're doing with the platform and the marketing, because the platform is just the engine. The stuff we're doing with it, I think people don't understand. And I think that message needs to be had so that you can understand what we're actually paying for. When I started this, the idea was to build a platform that we could build upon to use, the platform to market to. And I think what I have done a terrible job of doing is explaining what exactly we're doing, and the breadth of work that's being done by Class 4.
Yeah, I think that understanding the platform, I think that's fine to definitely put that on the agenda. Why don't you figure out when we should do that? I would probably do that nearer the end of this 4-month period than the beginning. But it's up to you. I think but anyway, I actually withdraw that comment. I think that
Might be better do it a little earlier, I think. So
however you want, I withdraw my comment.
No, that's fine. And then I think Greta and I, we talked about the survey. And Greta, why don't you lead that discussion?
Yeah, this is the last item, the visitor survey and the merchant survey.
Can I just throw in, thank you, John. You've done a lot of massaging of what we've learned from these surveys, and I think you deserve a great vote of applause for all that effort you've done. It made it very easy to look at.
All right, thanks. No, I'm happy. I was happy to do it. So
Chat GPT really did a great job making that chart for you.
Yeah. All right, Greta. last item on the agenda.
So specifically, well, it's, I was one of the people who originally did the merchant survey. And so that's kind of the one that I'm more familiar with. But now that I'm on the marketing team, I just spoke with the crew, well, the small group, the working group, about the visitor survey and how we can get that out. And I think that Tim from class 4 is trying to figure out how best to format it. And, you know, he was looking at the one that you formatted for the local community, which looked great. The visitors survey is much shorter, so hopefully it's a little bit simplified. And looking at the questions specifically in our group, we felt, I know it's not in front of everyone here in the meeting, but it's a short survey. There are only 7 questions. And the last one saying, you know, something to the effect of, you can think of one thing to make Woodstock more appealing, what would it be? And we kind of thought that that was a little bit, we could simplify that language and just make it simple. Like, is there one thing about Woodstock you would change or something like that? Just kind of keep it a little bit more to the point, instead of saying more appealing, like already putting them up for thinking Woodstock isn't already appealing. So anyway, we had that discussion. It looks like it's ready to go. Just curious how we should get it out there. And the team also had a suggestion that maybe there would be some sort of incentive to these visitors. You know, there's something connected, like not necessarily a coupon code, but something along those lines. That's something that to give them, incentivize them to actually fill out the survey and take the time. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But
John, did you format that? Did you
survey
format
that the survey that we did for the community
visitor, not the visitor one, the townspeople one?
is just done on Microsoft Forms.
Because if you do that again on this one, we'll just use the link, and we can send this out to all of the people who have signed up for the platform, you know, that we've collected names for, and this can go out as an individual email asking them for their feedback, and basically go down 2 paths. If have they been to Woodstock, then they go down the questions. If they haven't been to Woodstock, then maybe we ask a different set of questions of, you know, kind of like, why not? Do you see this in the future? And get a little bit of information both ways.
It's very easy to set up a similar form for that short visitor survey. But if we do that, I think technically we lose, I don't know how to connect, we lose the identification of the person.
Is that critical?
I don't know. It's not as important as getting this done. I think if we could, if this is simply sending out 40,000 emails or taking 40,000 people through that little tree, and then we get the 26,000 that have been here. And
yeah.
I think having the results of the visitor survey at the same meeting as we have the results of the resident survey is going to be important. And I think we need to do that in October. So
Yeah.
if that's the case, then the fastest thing to do would be to do just what you guys said. And I can have this set up by, tomorrow night.
Yeah, let me know that, and I will work with Greta and Tim to figure out what to, how we send this out. But we can send out an email, literally keep it simple. We can have it out very quickly.
So Greta, unless anyone objects, we went through, public meetings when we talked about those questionnaires and what the question should be and so forth. I don't have any, I wouldn't want to change the questions for the people who came to Woodstock from those 7 or 9, but I don't mind if you change the wording according to what you described, however you think is a better wording. Does anyone object to that? I mean, rather than talking about it, like approving it or whatever.
Fine.
I mean, the gist of what
you like me to read the exact?
No. Just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Run with it, Greta.
Yeah, that's fine. Because the intent of the question is the same. So if that's the case, then Greta, I'll give you tomorrow night, I can give you, or sometime over the weekend, then I can give you the form And you can just send me any edits that are needed, or if you want, for that last question or whatever, whenever it is. I don't think I can easily give you the ability to edit the form with me. If I can, I will.
That's great. And also Beth, you know, they see a lot of people in the visitor center, so maybe we can have printed out surveys there. Similar.
That's an idea.
I would drop the idea of an incentive. I think that's gonna slow down the process and just get it out.
I agree.
I think what we could do is if we don't get enough response, we could then reconsider that.
Put a QR code in the visitor center.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that would be better.
Yeah,
The QR
code sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
As a
because
what?
if John does the form the way he did the resident one, then a paper form's not gonna be.
Yeah.
the same.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
okay, great. So that was, yeah, and then let Greta, I know you're closer to the merchant survey. I think maybe you and Beth could just discuss that, and I mean, we've agreed on the survey. I don't know where I don't know what the issues are, and we don't need to discuss them tonight, but if there are issues, if you can come, either launch it or come back to us next month and ask for input and guidance on any of the issues. Is that all right? Or are there issues that you know of, or?
Yeah, that's great. No, I think we had a couple versions of it, and it was passed by everyone on the EDC, the most recent simple version, and I think we should just get it out to the merchants and
Great. Okay. All
I'll
right.
talk to Beth about how to get it out.
Okay. So that's it. That's our agenda. Are there any other comments?
I move we adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yo.
Any opposed?
Done.
All right, thanks, everybody. Good to
Thanks
see
a
you.
lot,
Greta.
everyone.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Thank
Greta,
you.
before you go, can you call me tomorrow?
Did you just say Greta?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Give me a call tomorrow. I do want to go over a couple of things with you, right? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys.